Step back. You cannot hold our boarding, Raymond Willard barked, eyes fixed on Victoria Hinton. His foot planted sideways, blocking her path. Hands hovering near the scanner. Around them, the terminal hummed, whispers threaded the crowd. Phones rose. Victoria didn't argue. She stayed still. Every gesture became data. Nothing personal. Everything procedural. The words struck the space like a quiet alarm. Not loud. Not dramatic. Sharp enough to reorganize the room. The boarding lane narrowed around her without moving an inch. The carpet pattern stopped feeling neutral. The scanner beeped for someone else. Victoria felt the heat of attention settle on her shoulders, the way it always did when authority decided to make an example without announcing it. At first, she assumed error. A simple misread. She checked the boarding pass. Gate number. Group. Seat. Everything correct. She looked at the line. Then back at him. His posture didn't shift. Not an apology stance. Not confusion. A block. A pause that dared her to argue so the scene could escalate on his terms. That's when her stomach tightened. Passengers slid past her shoulder. One by one. No pause. No barked instruction. A softer voice. A gentler hand motion. Same rules. Different tone. Different enforcement. Same procedure. If you've ever been quiet in a public space and watched authority decide that quiet meant permission, you recognize this moment. Silence gets mistaken for surrender. And if you're paying attention, you know exactly when the story is being written about you without your consent. Victoria didn't fill the silence. She catalogued it. The hum of rolling luggage. The rhythm of boarding announcements. The way his fingers hovered too long near the scanner, like proximity itself was leverage. She tracked the micro-movements. Logged the sequence. Noted who passed. Who hesitated. Who watched and chose not to look away. Somewhere behind her, a woman stopped pretending to text. Somewhere to her left, a man slowed his walk just enough to register what was happening. Phone stayed up. No one spoke. Notice how authority assumes silence equals compliance. And notice how often that assumption gets rewarded. What Raymond Willard didn't know, what he couldn't see from behind the scanner, was that the airline's CEO stood 3 rows back in the boarding lane, coat folded over her arm, watching the entire exchange without interrupting it. If you're wondering why no one stepped in yet, ask yourself how many times you've waited for clarity before acting. Comment if you've ever felt that pause stretch longer than it should. Victoria stayed still. Observe. Assess. Document. And if understanding patterns matters more than drama, this is where you lean in. Subscribe, not for the confrontation, but for what comes next. Like this if you've ever been assessed silently in public. The line moved. The room held its breath. The boarding area felt smaller now, tighter, like the walls had leaned in to listen. Raymond Willard shifted his weight and let the scanner dangle from his wrist, a quiet reminder of who controlled the flow. His voice dropped half an octave when he spoke again, calm but edged, the tone reserved for correction, not conversation. This is how it works, he said, not explaining, just declaring. Victoria heard the confidence behind it. The kind that comes from knowing the system would back him before it ever questioned him. Procedures wrapped around him like armor. Policies he could bend without naming. Rules he could enforce without explaining. She watched him closely. He quoted the boarding order, but skipped a line. He gestured to the sign, then blocked it with his body. He glanced at the screen, then spoke before it refreshed. Small things. Easy to miss if you weren't trained to notice how power leaves fingerprints even when it pretends to be clean. Victoria noticed everything. Behind her, a man cleared his throat and said nothing. To her right, a woman raised her eyebrows, then looked away. Micro glances passed like signals no one wanted to decode out loud. The room knew something was off, but discomfort is easier to carry than confrontation. If you've ever watched a situation like this and told yourself it wasn't your place, let us hear your views. Comment in the comment section. Silence has weight, even when it feels harmless. Raymond repeated himself, slower this time, as if speed had been the problem. His hand hovered between the scanner and her boarding pass, never quite touching either. A pause meant to pressure. A pause meant to teach. Victoria stayed still. Her face neutral. Her breathing steady. She logged the hesitation before his next sentence. She logged the way his eyes flicked toward the line, checking for witnesses, then back to her, checking for submission. She logged the fact that 2 more passengers were waved through without delay while she remained stationary. Accountability doesn't arrive loudly. It starts with noticing the tiny cracks, the moments where authority slips and hopes no one is counting. The CEO remained unseen, unacknowledged, just another passenger in a long coat, watching how confidence curdles when it goes unquestioned. If you want to see how systems reveal themselves when pressure is applied, hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell. What unfolds next depends on what has already been recorded. The scanner beeped again. Not for Victoria. For someone else. Later, away from the gate noise and the eyes that pretended not to see, Victoria sat alone with her briefcase open across her knees. The zipper teeth rested like a straight line, clean and controlled. Inside were folders, thin and thick, each one labeled in her own hand. Dates. Routes. Names. Small facts most people forget because they are taught that forgetting is easier. Her breathing slowed as her fingers touched the paper edges. Calm arrived the same way it always did, not as comfort, but as habit. She had learned it early. Learned it because reaction was always judged before reason. Learned it because emotion was treated like guilt when it came from someone who looked like her. She remembered the first time a man spoke over her in a meeting and later claimed he had not seen her hand raised. The room had nodded with him. She remembered the supervisor who smiled while saying she was impressive, then asked whose assistant she was. She remembered the security guard who asked for her badge twice while others walked past without breaking stride. Those moments never announced themselves as lessons. They arrived quietly. They stayed. Back then, she had tried to explain. She had tried to correct. She had tried to be understood. None of that worked. What worked was learning how systems speak to themselves. What worked was reading policies the way others read faces. What worked was patience. If you are listening to this and thinking calm comes naturally, like this video and sit with the truth that calm is often survival dressed as composure. Victoria flipped one folder open. Inside were printed policies, highlighted in pale yellow, notes written in the margins. Not emotional notes. Structural ones. Where wording could be bent. Where silence created space. Where timing mattered more than volume. She did not collect these things out of bitterness. She collected them out of pattern recognition. Every delay, every dismissal, every polite smile that hit a closed door had taught her where pressure could be applied without warning. There was a rhythm to it now. Observe. Confirm. Document. Wait. She checked her watch, not for time, but for alignment. Strategy lived in sequence. You moved too early, and authority framed you as disruptive. You moved too late, and the moment disappeared. Precision was the only language that stayed respected when respect itself was withheld. A memory surfaced. An airport in another city. Another uniform. Another calm voice telling her she needed to step aside because something was wrong with her ticket. She had stepped aside then. Watched 3 people pass her. Heard an apology later that did not undo the delay. She had written that one down too. Empathy does not mean agreement. It means understanding why someone prepares this way. If that truth lands with you, let us hear your views. Comment in the comment section and say what preparation looks like in your own life. Victoria closed the folder and reached for another. This one thinner. Certificates. Training records. Credentials that were rarely asked for until someone needed proof she belonged where she already stood. She did not display them. She did not lead with them. They were not armor. They were leverage, used only when necessary. The gate announcement echoed faintly in the distance. Boarding continued. The world did not pause for strategy. That was fine. Strategy never needed applause. She leaned back and let the memory of the attendant's pause replay. The half-second hesitation. The glance toward the line. The confidence that came from assuming no one important was watching. Those were the tells. Those were the cracks. Strategy unfolds when patience meets observation. If you want to keep learning how quiet moments turn into leverage, hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell and stay present. Victoria closed the briefcase with a soft click. Not final. Just ready. Because the next move would not look loud. And that was exactly the point. The refusals came one after another, spaced just far enough apart to feel reasonable. Raymond did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He repeated policy phrases like they were facts of nature, unchangeable and final. Each time, he framed the denial as routine, nothing personal, just procedure doing its job. Victoria listened without interruption. She asked one question, then stopped. She waited. He answered with half an explanation and filled the rest with confidence. Then he refused again. The words changed slightly, but the meaning stayed the same. Not now. Not here. Not allowed. She nodded once and did not move. Every refusal added weight. A time stamp. A phrasing choice. A contradiction between what he said now and what he had said 3 minutes earlier. She tracked the sequence quietly, the way someone counts steps in the dark. No reaction meant no warning. Guilt was not required. Evidence always spoke louder than emotion. If you have ever learned that lesson the hard way, like this video and understand why silence can be strategic. Raymond grew more relaxed with each denial. His shoulders loosened. His stance widened. He began explaining things she had not asked about, filling the air with authority meant to overwhelm rather than clarify. Confidence does that. It mistakes quiet for surrender. Behind them, the line slowed. A woman shifted her bag from one shoulder to the other. A man checked his phone twice without unlocking it. No one spoke, but attention gathered. People sense imbalance before they can name it. Victoria adjusted her grip on her phone, not to record him, but to mark the time. She cross-referenced the boarding call echoing overhead with his refusal to let her proceed. She noted the discrepancy between the system announcement and his personal enforcement. Another denial followed. Then another. He said the system had flagged something. Then he said it was just protocol. Then he said a supervisor would confirm the same thing if called. Each version contradicted the last by a fraction, not enough to alarm him, enough to matter later. She did not correct him. If you are watching this unfold and thinking patience feels unfair, let us hear your views. Comment in the comment section and say what patience has cost you before. Raymond's voice softened as he spoke again, the tone people use when they believe they have already won. He gestured toward the waiting area, not asking, just directing. It was meant to close the interaction, to reset the scene with him still in control. Victoria stayed where she was. The pause stretched. Long enough to draw attention. Short enough to feel intentional. He glanced toward a coworker, then back at her. The coworker looked away. That look mattered. She logged it too. Authority often relies on witnesses choosing comfort over truth. But even comfort has limits. She asked for clarification, simple and calm. He repeated himself and added a detail that did not align with the policy he had cited earlier. Another thread added to the stack. Another point of leverage built quietly. Patience turns into leverage when it is paired with observation. If you want to see how that shift happens, hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell and stay with the story. A child nearby tugged at their mother's sleeve. A boarding beep sounded again. Someone else passed through without delay. The contrast sharpened the moment. Even those who did not understand the rules could feel the difference. Raymond smiled tightly now. Confidence edged with irritation. He believed repetition would end it. He believed the system would cover him if questioned. He did not realize how much he had already revealed. Victoria exhaled once, slow and controlled. She had what she needed. Not proof yet, but pattern. Not confrontation yet, but foundation. If you have ever chosen quiet strategy over open conflict, share this video, tag someone who can or need to see how patience is built under pressure. The next move would force the system to speak for itself. And systems, when cornered, rarely stay consistent. Victoria stepped slightly to the side, not away, just enough to claim a quiet pocket of space. Corners matter in places like this. They hide movement. They allow thinking. She opened her phone and organized what she already had. Times aligned. Phrases repeated. Gaps formed a shape that could no longer be ignored. She did not rush. She synced notes with the boarding announcements, lining sound with action. The system spoke on schedule. Raymond did not. That difference mattered. She saved it. She labeled it clearly. Calm made the work cleaner. A staff member passed behind her and slowed. No words were exchanged. Just a brief nod, barely visible, but deliberate. It meant someone else had noticed the inconsistency too. Hidden allies rarely announce themselves. They confirm quietly. If you have ever learned that accountability grows from quiet preparation, like this video and stay with the pattern forming here. Victoria requested a clarification at the desk, polite and specific. The response came back softer than before. Less confident. A printed guideline appeared, slid across the counter, then pulled back. She caught the title and the revision date. It did not match what Raymond had cited earlier. She logged that too. Another staff member approached, this one careful with their tone. They asked a neutral question, the kind designed to gather facts without choosing sides. Victoria answered simply and waited. The staff member checked the screen and paused longer than expected. That pause was confirmation. No one raised their voice. No one accused anyone of anything. But the air changed. Strategy had replaced emotion. The room could feel it even if it could not name it. If you are watching this and realizing how often preparation is dismissed as passivity, let us hear your views. Comment in the comment section and say where you learned that lesson. Victoria stepped back again, just enough to review everything once more. She created a clean sequence. First denial. Second denial. Contradiction. Witness movement. Policy mismatch. Announcement overlap. Each piece stood on its own. Together, they pointed in one direction. She sent nothing yet. Across the boarding area, Raymond laughed lightly with a coworker. The sound was casual. Confident. He believed the moment had passed. He believed repetition had done its job. He did not know the record was already complete. A supervisor walked by, slowed, then stopped. A quiet exchange followed. No gestures toward Victoria. No visible conflict. Just information moving where it needed to go. Preparation becomes pressure when it reaches the right hands. If you want to see how that shift unfolds, hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell and stay with what happens next. Victoria closed her notes and locked her phone. The work was done for now. What followed would not require argument. Systems respond best to their own language, reflected back clearly. A final confirmation arrived, subtle but decisive. A name attached. A time noted. A process triggered. From this point forward, nothing could be undone quietly. She returned to her original position, calm and composed, exactly where she had been told to step back from. The choice was intentional. Visibility matters once preparation is complete. If you believe strategy over spectacle always wins, share this video, tag someone who can or need to understand why quiet moves change outcomes. The boarding area hummed again, but the sound carried tension now, not confusion. Somewhere behind the scenes, the system was being asked to explain itself. And systems never like that question. Victoria stepped forward and asked for verification, not permission. Her voice stayed level as she cited the boarding protocol by section, then by revision date. The words landed clean because they were accurate. Procedures have weight when they are precise. Raymond's confidence stalled. He turned to the screen and scrolled, slower than before. The scanner rested against his wrist, quiet now, no longer leading. He repeated a line he had used earlier, then stopped when it did not match what was displayed. Guilt has no place when rules are documented, and if you believe that clarity matters more than volume, like this video and stay with the shift happening here. Victoria continued, careful and exact. She referenced the guideline that allowed priority boarding under specific conditions. She named the condition. She named the time window. She did not accuse. She invited verification. Raymond cleared his throat and checked again. A small crack formed in the pause. His hand hovered, uncertain. He asked a coworker to confirm. The coworker leaned in, read the screen, and nodded once without speaking. The room grew quiet. Silence can be louder than argument. Heads turned, not to Victoria, but to the process unfolding. Phones lowered. Whispers stopped. Attention moved the way gravity moves, toward the point where certainty was failing. If you were in that space, what would you have cited in that moment, and why? Let us hear your views. Comment in the comment section and explain what detail you would not ignore. Raymond tried a different angle, a procedural shortcut, but Victoria was already there. She cited the exception clause and the required confirmation step. She named the oversight calmly. The words were simple. The effect was not. He hesitated again? A supervisor arrived and listened. No one spoke over anyone else. The screen was turned so all could see. The guideline was read aloud. The date was wrong on Raymond's earlier reference. The policy had been updated months ago. Strategic leverage is procedural, not emotional, and if you want to see how patience turns into pressure, hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell as this moment tightens. Raymond's shoulders shifted. He adjusted his stance, no longer blocking the path. The scanner beeped once as he reloaded the correct screen. The sound cut through the silence like a signal. Victoria waited. A passenger behind her exhaled, slow and relieved. Another nodded, barely noticeable, a silent acknowledgement that something important had just been corrected. No applause followed. This was not spectacle. It was alignment. Raymond spoke again, quieter now. He confirmed the protocol. He confirmed the condition. He confirmed the oversight. Each word closed a door he had left open earlier. If silent action has ever spoken louder for you than confrontation, like this video and recognize how power responds when it meets accuracy. Victoria stepped forward only when the process allowed it. The scanner accepted her pass. The green light flashed. The path cleared. But the moment was not over. The supervisor asked Raymond to remain for a brief review. The request was neutral. The tone was final. Raymond nodded, once, and stepped aside. If you believe this lesson needs to be seen by someone who still thinks confidence replaces compliance, share this video, tag someone who can or need to understand how rules protect when used correctly. Victoria moved ahead, calm and unchanged, while the system turned inward to account for itself. Behind her, verification continued. Questions followed. Records opened. And the silence returned, heavier now, carrying the weight of what had just been exposed. The records came up one by one, quiet and plain, but together they told a story no one could rush past. Timestamps lined up. Boarding logs matched. Notes from earlier flights showed the same pauses, the same selective checks, the same passengers slowed down while others moved freely. Accountability is procedural, not personal, and if you understand that truth, like this video and stay with what is unfolding here. Victoria did not explain the pattern. She did not need to. The document spoke in order. Each screen refresh added weight. Each confirmation closed another escape route. What looked like a single moment now stretched backward into repetition. People began to notice. A supervisor leaned closer to read. Another staff member folded their arms, not defensive, just focused. A quiet nod passed between two employees who had seen this before but never seen it named so clearly. Power realigns when evidence is allowed to finish its sentence, and if you want to see how that shift happens without shouting, hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell. Raymond stood slightly apart now. Not isolated, but no longer centered. His voice had lost its edge. When he spoke, it was to clarify, not to command. Each time he reached for confidence, the logs answered back. The energy in the space changed without anyone announcing it. Passengers who had rushed earlier slowed down. A woman held the door longer than necessary. A man stepped aside to give Victoria space, not in apology, but in recognition. These were small gestures, almost invisible, but they added up. Quiet victories ripple outward, and if you believe moments like this matter beyond this gate, share this video, tag someone who can or need to see how patterns are broken without spectacle. The review expanded. A date range widened. The same name appeared more than once next to delayed scans and discretionary stops. No accusation followed. Just alignment. Just confirmation. Raymond looked at the screen longer this time. His shoulders dropped. Not in shame, but in understanding that something larger than him was now in motion. Credibility does not disappear all at once. It thins. It fades at the edges. Empathy here was not emotional. It was strategic. It grew from observation, not reaction, and if you have ever learned to survive by watching carefully, like this video, and recognize that skill for what it is. Victoria stayed composed. Her role was complete. The system was now examining itself. She watched the process the same way she had watched him earlier, noting tone, noting sequence, noting who spoke and who deferred. A quiet acknowledgement passed between her and the CEO, still unintroduced, still unnamed. No signal. No reveal. Just awareness shared in the same space. If you were documenting this moment for yourself, what would you record first, and why? Let us hear your views. Comment in the comment section and say what detail you would not let disappear. The supervisor asked for additional reports. A tablet changed hands. A checklist was pulled up. Procedures that had once been used to block were now being used to examine. Raymond stepped back fully. Not ordered. Not removed. Just repositioned by process. The authority he had leaned on earlier now moved past him, focused elsewhere. The room felt lighter, not because the issue was solved, but because it was finally named. Watch how evidence realigns power, and if you want to follow how the next pattern forms before it becomes another incident, hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell. Victoria gathered her things. No victory pose. No reaction for the crowd. She moved with the same calm she had carried from the start. Dignity does not announce itself. Behind her, quiet conversations continued. Questions were asked that had never been asked aloud. Notes were taken that would not be erased easily. Every small move matters, and if you believe moments like this change systems inch by inch, like this video and stay present for what comes next. Because while this gate returned to routine, the pattern it revealed had already begun traveling forward, logged, remembered, and impossible to fully ignore. What followed was not chaos, but correction, and correction always reveals how fragile authority becomes once it is forced to explain itself. Screens refreshed again. Logs were amended. A request for review moved upward, then outward. What had started as one gate issue now touched scheduling, compliance, and oversight. Systems do not panic. They adjust. And in that adjustment, weakness shows. Raymond tried to regain his footing. He straightened his posture and cleared his throat, but no one moved toward him anymore. Questions were no longer directed at him. Instructions no longer came from his mouth. He stood present, but functionally absent. When patterns are exposed, systems falter in small but meaningful ways, and if you notice how this happens without shouting, like this video and stay attentive. Staff who had hovered earlier now kept distance. Not hostility. Not punishment. Just space. Distance is often the first response when risk is identified. Conversations shifted away from him. Decisions were confirmed without his input. Authority does not vanish, it gets rerouted. Victoria watched without expression. She leaned against the wall, hands relaxed at her sides, eyes moving calmly from person to person. There was no satisfaction in her face. No relief. Just observation. The same posture she had held from the beginning. If you have ever seen power retreat without apology, let us hear your views. Comment in the comment section and say where you have noticed it happen. A supervisor requested additional audits. A second manager joined the call remotely. A phrase appeared more than once in the notes, deviation from standard application. It was neutral language, but heavy with consequence. Raymond attempted to explain context. His words landed softly, then fell away. Context is useful when systems trust you. When trust thins, context becomes noise. Quiet shifts can topple giants, and if you understand how slow pressure works better than force, like this video and follow the pattern. Passengers continued boarding under revised checks. The flow resumed, but it was slower, more careful. Each scan felt deliberate now. Each pause documented. What once moved on instinct now moved on record. Accountability shows itself in systemic correction, not in punishment, and if you are watching this with intention, hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell to understand how these changes ripple outward. Raymond's badge cut the overhead light as he stepped aside. For a moment, it gleamed, then dulled again as he turned his body away from the scanner. Symbols matter less once function is removed. No one addressed him directly. No one scolded him. The system had moved past the need for confrontation. It was busy fixing itself. Victoria noticed how quickly language shifted. Where once there had been commands, there were now confirmations. Where tone had been sharp, it softened into caution. The room had learned. If you believe learning moments like this deserve attention, share this video, tag someone who can or need to see how correction really works. A compliance checklist expanded on screen. Items were checked slowly. A note was added about discretionary enforcement. Another about bias awareness training. These were not solutions. They were signals. Raymond looked smaller now. Not physically, but structurally. The role he occupied had narrowed. Authority is wide when untested. It becomes precise under review. Understanding the pattern is power, and if you want to see how recognition spreads quietly from one moment to the next, hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell. Victoria shifted her weight and glanced toward the windows. Planes moved steadily outside, unaffected by what was happening inside. Systems larger than any person continued as designed. She adjusted the strap of her bag and checked the time. She was still early. She always planned to be. Staff members exchanged brief looks, then returned to their tasks. No one celebrated. No one acknowledged her directly. The change was not about recognition. It was about correction. If you notice the cracks before they widen, let us hear your views. Comment in the comment section and say what detail most people miss in moments like this. Raymond remained nearby, hands clasped now, waiting. Waiting is difficult for those used to directing movement. His silence carried a different weight than hers had earlier. This silence came from uncertainty. A report was finalized. Another was queued. Oversight does not arrive all at once. It layers. It revisits. It remembers. Strategy spreads when it is seen to work, and if you are learning from this without needing spectacle, like this video and stay present. Victoria took a step forward when called. Not summoned. Invited. Her name was spoken clearly this time. Respect does not require volume. She answered questions simply. Dates. Times. Observations. No emotion attached. Facts stand best on their own. Raymond did not interrupt. The giant had not fallen. It had staggered. And in that stagger, others saw what was possible. If you want to watch how preparation becomes pressure across systems, hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell. As boarding neared completion, the space settled into a new rhythm. Not healed. Not resolved. Just altered. Systems rarely return to their old shape once examined. Victoria moved toward the gate, documents secure, posture unchanged. Behind her, processes continued without her. The work had shifted from moment to method. And somewhere beyond this terminal, another gate, another room, another quiet correction was already waiting to begin. Weeks later, the terminal moved differently. Not in chaos. Not in celebration. Just subtly, in the quiet rhythm of corrected procedures and enforced documentation. Staff who had once followed habit now followed evidence. The flow shifted without a word, as if the system itself remembered what had happened and adapted. Victoria observed from a corner, posture steady, eyes scanning. No applause. No recognition. She simply nodded to small improvements, a silent mentor ensuring that the changes would hold. What mattered now was replication, not heroics. The work was methodical, and influence spread quietly, like ink seeping into paper. If you notice the invisible growth of strategy in your own environment, like this video and consider how observation builds power. Across counters and stations, staff moved with a new awareness. Decisions were checked twice. Scans were deliberate. Notes were taken. Small gestures, holding doors, confirming names, double-checking logs, mattered. Patterns were forming, and they were not accidental. This was systemic teaching. This was quiet accountability. A manager whispered a correction to a colleague. The tone was calm but firm. No one raised their voice. No one sought recognition. This was influence without spectacle. Quiet victories are often the most permanent. If you see how small corrections ripple into larger change, hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell to understand how procedural victories multiply. Victoria moved among them, observing, suggesting without speaking too loudly, confirming without taking credit. Her presence alone reminded others that oversight is not about punishment, it is about consistency. Every adjustment, no matter how minor, built on the last. Systems were learning. People were learning. And strategy was becoming embedded. If you are noticing moments like this in your own spaces, let us hear your views, comment in the comment section. What small change matters most in the environment you influence? Documentation that had once gathered dust now guided actions. Checks previously ignored were enforced. Miscommunications were reduced. The smallest discrepancies were corrected. Patterns were no longer broken, they were aligned. Influence spread slowly, and if you are tracking it closely, share this video, tag someone who can or need to see how quiet victories take hold. Time passed, and new staff followed examples set by observation. Training became grounded in evidence, not assumption. Compliance was no longer reactive, it was proactive. Influence became embedded in process, not dependent on a single person's authority. Victoria stepped back, observing one final scan. Procedures now reflected reality. The terminal hummed a little differently. The space was safer, clearer. Small victories compounded quietly, unnoticed by most, but undeniable to those who watched carefully. If you understand how systems shift quietly and strategically, hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell and follow the next ripple. The work did not end with one gate, one flight, or one incident. Accountability continued in whispers, adjustments, and repeated correct application. Systems remembered. Patterns multiplied. What once seemed like isolated oversight had become methodical, observable, and replicable. Victoria turned, her documents secure, steps measured. No heroics. Just momentum. Influence would extend beyond her presence, sustained by structure, observation, and quiet enforcement. The work of one individual had seeded collective change. If you see the power in subtle systemic shifts, like this video and recognize that small actions ripple outward. The next pattern waits to be formed, the next system awaits correction, and the next case begins already. Victoria stepped into the familiar space. The scanner beeped methodically now, following protocols at once bent. Boarding lines flowed smoother, passes checked with care. Staff no longer skipped steps. The terminal breathed with subtle order, proof of incremental change. Small, almost invisible actions now carried weight. Like this video if you notice how minor adjustments ripple through a system over time. She paused, watching the flight attendant who had once challenged her. Movements were slower, gestures measured, confidence tempered by hesitation. Authority still cast a shadow, but it was fractured, evidence of accountability applied steadily. Systems corrected quietly. Hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell to see how vigilance reshapes routine operations. Walking the line, Victoria saw a clerk holding a door for an elderly passenger, another double-checking manifests. Correct behavior was reinforced by oversight, not fear. Silent nods rippled among observers. Let us hear your views. Comment in the comment section. Have you seen quiet attention shift an environment? A tablet pinged from the back office. Alerts, minor misalignments, subtle patterns to track. One gate improved, another lagged. Change was uneven but persistent. Victoria cataloged everything, noting leverage points for future interventions. Share this video, tag someone who can or need to see how continuous observation matters. The terminal clock ticked. Victory was incomplete. Authority adapted, but culture moved slower. Rules and measured correction alone could not break biases everywhere. Like this video if you understand that methodical accountability is essential. Processes reinforce themselves through repetition, not heroics. Observation became mentorship without words. Victoria's work was seed, not spectacle. Small, precise acts now carried replicable weight. Hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell to watch procedural victories expand quietly. Her eyes scanned the boarding area again. The flight attendant paused before asking a passenger, referencing documentation before acting. Patterns once invisible were now readable. Let us hear your views. Comment in the comment section. What minor oversight would you correct first? Flights departed, doors closed, alerts reminded that observation never ceased. Lessons built on lessons, work remained ongoing. The antagonist shadow lingered elsewhere. Share this video, tag someone who can or need to apply quiet strategy in their own spaces. Victoria walked calmly, a folder under her arm. No fanfare. Strategy embedded in process. The city beyond pulsed quietly, unaware of these shifts. Like this video if you know accountability is a practice, not a one-time act. Night deepened. A blinking cursor on a fresh document marked the next task. Patterns would continue, alerts would arrive, the next case already underway. Hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell to track what unfolds next. In the silence, Victoria whispered, "What will you document tomorrow?" Work remained perpetual, exacting, uncelebrated, relentless. Let us hear your views. Comment in the comment section, and prepare for the next ripple. At Black Stories Uncut, we don't soften the edges or dilute the lesson. We tell it straight. Systems reveal themselves when we observe, document, and act. Subscribe and turn on your notification bell. The next story is just almost here.